everybody, it's Emily at Arg Schooling, and today, again, I'm sharing some more about our 9th grade homeschooling curriculum plans, and today I'm going to be talking about my favorite topic, our read aloud plans. So yes, my daughter is 14 going on 15, she's starting 9th grade, and we still read aloud. I am a big believer in reading aloud, even to teens. I think it's a great bonding experience. I think it's a great way to share a story together and stay connected, but also I just love reading to my kids and I love sharing stories with them. Let's just talk about it. We have a lot of books. I'm gonna start by saying I am really bad at over planning. I always plan too much. Will we get to all of these? Doubtful. Do I want to get to all of these? Absolutely. But I don't know. We'll see. Let's just go through what I have planned. We're going to start the year with The Windaby Puzzle by Lois Lowry. This was a last minute inclusion because after I read it, I went, wow, that would go really great at the beginning of our year when we're learning about historians and anthropology and how scientists and archaeologists discover things and how they put that together into it's a really great introduction to that, because what the author does here is she read about this story about these archaeologists discovering this bog body in, I think, northern Germany, and they didn't know at first if this was a murder scene or not, but then they found out that this body is really old, from the Iron Age. And so then they start making well, what did they think happened here? This is the body of a child. Why was this child here? Why was it blindfolded? Were they sacrificed? What happened here? The author explains the history at the start of the book and why they started coming to the conclusions that they did about this body. Then she writes a story based on that information, set in this time period, about what happened to this child. Then the second half of the book, she goes into the history again about how they made new discoveries about it. And then she writes yet another story about what that might have looked like. So it's really great. It's also a really interesting way of looking at the writing process and how writers come up with their ideas and stuff like that. So fascinating stuff. I don't know. I thought this was excellent. So we're going to start the year with that. We're going to be reading Binti, the complete series by Nnedi Okorafor. I'm so excited. I've never done this as a read aloud, but I've read this book twice, and every time I read it, I get more out of it. The first time I read it, I liked it a lot. The second time I read it, it blew me away. So I'm really excited to read it a third time, especially to read it aloud. This book is so good. So this is a story about a girl from an African tribe where they're dedicated to their earth. They live on planet Earth, but also they coat their bodies in the mud from where they live, and that's a big part of their culture. And nobody ever leaves planet, but she really wants to go and study at this university in space. And she's the first person from her tribe to ever leave and do that. And along the way, she encounters this race of aliens who I don't want to say befriends, because that's not exactly right, and I don't want to give anything away either. I kind of think this is a story you want to go into knowing as little as possible, because it's so good. Nnedi Okorafor is masterful when it comes to world building. Her world building is just perfection. The world in this story is so rich and so detailed, it feels real. And the story, the characters, everything is just excellent. I love it. So we're going to be reading that. We're reading Eva by Peter Dickinson. I had this in our stack last year and we didn't get to it, but I do not want to miss it this year because it goes really well with what we're learning about in history. So this is a story about a girl who lives in the future. We don't know when in the future. I'd say near future, especially with the way we're going right now, when animals have become pretty scarce. There are no more animals in the wild. All the animals left are in labs and in captivity somewhere. And there's not many. But they do have chimpanzees, and her family are scientists who study chimpanzees. And one day, Eva is in a tragic accident, and her body is completely broken. But they have a way to save her by putting her brain into the body of a chimpanzee. And so she is now human, but in the form of a chimpanzee. And the way this story discusses, like, the should you, just because you can, should you, and what does this do to a person? Like, can you do this just because you have the ability to? Like, how does this alter not just her, but other chimpanzees? It's fascinating. Like, this book leads to so much discussion. I cannot recommend it enough. I love it. So we're going to be reading that this year. We're going to be doing The Lord of the Rings. That's, like, definitely happening. And I am so excited because I decided that we were going to do the audiobooks narrated by Andy Serkis because he is amazing and I don't want to read them aloud. I love Lord of the Rings with my whole heart. It's my favorite thing in the world, but reading it aloud is a challenge and not one that I feel up for just now. So I decided that we would do the audiobooks because I really wanted to listen to Andy Serkis read the story to me. So we're going to do that together. I have Dry by Neil Shusterman in my stack. He wrote this with his son Jared Shusterman. This is a really great disaster story where the focus is on a drought in California. Again, feels very realistic. This story is about a group of kids who come together during the tap out. Basically, the water is gone. There's no more water to be found in the state of California, and these kids are in the midst of this disaster and trying to, like, survive it. And it's a really good story. I love that it's a one-off story. It starts, there's a middle, and then it ends. There's no continuation here. So I like that it wraps up relatively quickly. And it's just a fun look at what that would look like. I have Fahrenheit 451 by Ray Bradbury. This is another one that I'm making sure we actually do get to. I'm not going to go into, like, what this is. I'm pretty sure everyone knows at this point, but this is the book about book burning and what happens to a society that stops reading. A classic, one I'm excited to read with her. We're going to be reading The Last Quintinista by Donna Barba Higuera. This was so good. I read this at the very beginning of the year and I loved it. This was excellent. This is a story about storytelling. It's about the ability that we have to share stories with each other and how that affects us as humans. And this is a story about a girl who is selected, her and her family are selected to be able to leave the planet. The planet is dying. And we have been able to create this spacecraft where basically you're going to go to sleep until the spacecraft encounters this planet that we've discovered far, far, far into the, like, future. Like, it takes, I think, something like 200 years or something to get there. So they're going to be asleep, and when they wake up, they'll have landed. But while they're sleeping, they're going to be, like, listening to things that will teach them skills that they're going to need when they get there. The skill she has chosen is storytelling, and so she's listening to stories as she sleeps, and they're in space, but there's something that goes wrong. I'm not going to go into detail on that. This is technically labeled as middle grade, but I don't think that it counts as middle grade. This felt so much more like it should have been labeled as YA. The ideas that happen in here, I would not read this with a child younger than 11, maybe 12, because there's a lot of big concepts happening that I think would probably go over their heads. But I think high school level kids would get a lot out of this. I also have Breeding Sweetgrass for Young Adults by Robin Wall Kimmerer, because this was one of my favorite books that I added to level 9, and I didn't want to miss it if we could help it. This is her Young Readers edition, but it's pretty similar. But this one does have pictures in it and, like, little discussion prompts at the end of each chapter, which make it a really great read aloud, I think. And it's all about how Indigenous people approach taking care of the earth, which goes really well when we start talking about climate change later in the year, so we're going to try to make that happen. My other non-negotiable this year is going to be Shakespeare's Macbeth. We dabbled a bit in Shakespeare this last year in 8th grade, and she really enjoyed when we read Romeo and Juliet. This year we're going to do Macbeth. I might try to do a second Shakespeare, but I haven't decided yet. We might just do one. I don't know yet. We're going to see how the year goes, but I think she really liked Macbeth because she really likes like dark, gothic, murderous stories. So like she always asks, can we read something a little creepier? Like what if we read something that ended badly? So I think she would like Macbeth. We're also going to read Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. This is one of my favorite books. I'm excited for her to be introduced to it. I don't know if she's going to like it, but we're gonna read it and we're gonna find out. But this is one of my favorite classics, and I've been excited to introduce her to it. This one I don't know yet. I kind of want to read it first and decide if it's a book she's gonna like, but I feel like it's a book she's going to like. And that is In the Lives of Puppets by T.J. Klune. This is a story about robots, which is why I think she would love it, because she's always really enjoyed robot stories, and like The Wild Robot is one of her favorite things ever. This one is more of a Pinocchio story, I think. It's about the journey of a family assembled from spare parts. This family of robots lives in the woods, and I think it's also about like learning about humanity, which I think she would really enjoy. So this is on my list, and I'm still thinking about it, but we might get to that. I really want to make sure we get to Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee. This is another one of my favorite classics. I really enjoy the writing style in this book. I just find it really sucks you in, and I think she would like it. So it's a good like also intro to like the 1930s and that sort of thing. And then the last book I have in our stack is Nation by Terry Pratchett. She still hasn't read a Terry Pratchett book yet, so I'm like, maybe this would be the time. And this might be our first one. Our theme this year, if you haven't noticed, is kind of a science fiction fantasy realm, mostly science fiction. I really love Nation. This is a book about asking questions and wondering if just because you've always done it this way, does that mean that's the way it should be done? This is a story about a shipwreck on an island. There's been a big storm, and you're following two different characters. One is a boy who lives on this island as part of his tribe. He's on this quest to do this, what is it? Some kind of a task where he has to do that and then he'll become a man. So he is off on this task when the storm hits, and when he comes back, everyone's gone. And is he a man now? He did the thing, but it was interrupted by the storm, but he doesn't know, like, if he's able to move on. And we also meet a girl who is shipwrecked on this island, and it's also set in, like, the 1800s, so, like, she's a very proper girl, but she loves science and is always asking questions. And so it's a really like quirky story, but it's also really interesting and has a lot to say about like religious belief and dogma, and like, again, just because this is how it's been done is not mean it's necessarily right. Those are the books that we're going to hopefully read together this year. This is always subject to change. Like, there are some, like I said, that we are absolutely definitely going to get to, but there's a few others that I'm like, if she requests something different or we start it and she's just not feeling it at all, I'm willing to let it go and pick something else. So we'll see how this actually turns out. I'm going to probably, again, do another video at the end of the year reviewing and ranking like what we read, so that I can share like her thoughts on that. So stay tuned for that sometime in like June or July of 2024. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. I have one more to film. We're going to be talking in my next video about what we're going to be doing in our morning basket. So stay tuned for that, and I will see you guys in my next video. Happy reading. Bye!